Mshezi and Dondo. Never say you know when you have never seen the crazy things of this world. There were once two baboons who lived on a mountain in a place called Pondo. This mountain had a series of valleys surrounded by massive rocks. The baboons' names were Mshezi and Dondo. Mshezi was very old, while Dondo was still young and agile, able to stand his ground whenever attacked by Maburner's dogs. Having lived in Pondo for a long time, Mshezi had grown bored. To pass the time, he and Dondo often took walks to nearby villages. Over time, they became so accustomed to these places that they felt entirely at home. They knew that by dawn, the chickens would have finished laying eggs. Whenever they heard a cock crow, the baboons would climb down from the rocks and make their way to Maburner's homestead, which was situated just below the mountain. Mshezi was an expert at his craft, and so was his friend Dondo. As usual, one day, the baboons decided to completely ransack Maburner's homestead. At dawn, they woke up from the rocks and sat down to devise a plan. As the sun rose, Mshezi asked Dondo to scout the homestead. Dondo climbed a large rock to survey the area and then climbed back down to report to Mshezi. "Dondo, today we are not stealing, we are taking," said Mshezi, scratching his back and rubbing his eyes. Every time the chickens laid eggs, the baboons would climb down the mountain to steal from Maburner's homestead. But on that particular day, the plan was different. The goal was to beat Maburner up, forcing him to flee, so they could raid his entire home. After taking all the eggs from the nests, they would search the house and seize all the food and anything else they could carry, even things they couldn't eat. "Dondo, prepare your knob stick," said Mshezi as he perched on the rock, preparing to climb down. Likewise, Dondo took up his knob stick. Together, they descended the mountain toward Maburner's homestead. However, Maburner had sensed trouble. He had prepared his own weapons and a clever trap. Mixing white paint with water in a calabash, he placed it above the door of the food storage room and tied it with a long thread. Then he hid in the cattle kraal, waiting. The baboons stormed toward Maburner's home. Furious and panting, they entered the yard. "Quiet, we don't want any noise," Mshezi whispered. He tiptoed cautiously, scanning his surroundings. It was strangely quiet that day. "Go into the house and see if anyone is inside," Mshezi instructed, moving to the back of the house. Dondo crept into the open room. The moment he stepped inside, Maburner pulled the thread. The calabash tipped over, drenching Dondo in white paint. He slipped and fell hard on the floor. Terrified, he scrambled to his feet and bolted to find Mshezi. That was when all hell broke loose. Mshezi took one look at his now ghostly white friend and panicked. He had never seen such a creature before. That day revealed who was truly the fastest between the two baboons. Mshezi fled in sheer terror, convinced that some unknown beast was chasing him. Dondo tried to catch up, calling out, but Mshezi never looked back. The baboons raced up the mountain as if running for their lives. It was a race of fear, confusion, and desperation. But the worst part? Mshezi never realized it was Dondo. He ran and ran, never stopping, never returning home. And so, the two baboons never saw each other again. Mshezi, exhausted and terrified, eventually collapsed and died from sheer fright. Maburner, watching from a distance, was relieved. He smiled to himself and said, "At least God looks out for the oppressed. Sometimes, he makes them appear as heroes among heroes."